What's going on, guys? This is Joe Tallarico, and you're listening to the Aha Moment podcast, where we find regular people who said no to playing it safe, failed along the way, and are in the middle of their grind to the top. Here's how they think when everyone else tells them no. All right, guys, I am here today with Dillon. Dillon, tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, where you're from.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Joe. Appreciate it.
No problem.
So my name's Dillon Ceglio. I am from Bayonne, New Jersey. I've been living out here in Los Angeles for about 6 years, actually 6 years this week. So it's a nice little anniversary. I transferred into USC back in 2011, which is what brought me here to Los Angeles. Graduated in 2013 and been here ever since. Kind of just hustling, networking, trying to figure out what I really want to do, what my passions are in life. California's been pretty nice to me so far, so 6 years strong out here.
That's awesome. And what brought you out here exactly? What was your job before moving out?
So I was just a college student. I was going to a junior college in New Jersey. Nothing too crazy. Knew I kind of wanted to get a fresh start, try something new. Applied to a bunch of schools, Boston, Miami, and then California. Before coming out here, I'd never been west of the Mississippi River, actually. So when I finally got the acceptance letter from USC, I was like, I have to try it. I've been to Florida a bunch of times, been to Boston. I've grown up in New Jersey. It's pretty easy to commute to both of those places for the most part. But Los Angeles was just a foreign place where, they say dreams come true out here. So I was like, fuck it, I got to try it.
Now, USC's, as far as I remember, at least when I was applying, it was a pretty competitive school to get into. So did you always have good grades going into it? Like how was that like a reach school for you? Was that like that, I'm applying here, but I doubt I'll get in?
Yeah, so I kind of told Joe, just a little insight into our pre-interview conversation. I told Joe about the tattoos that I have on my body right now. And one of them is my SAT score. So it's something that I'm not very too proud of, but at the same time, I kind of am. So I got a 1440 out of 2400 on my SATs. It took me 3 times to get that score. Like I said, nothing that I'm proud about, being the fact that I didn't get into my first college until my very last day of high school. And I went to just to give you guys a little bit of insight as well, I went to a prep school in Jersey City, New Jersey, and they pushed, they were a good school, great reputation, and really smart kids that went to the school. And all my friends got into like the best schools in the country for the most part. And then there was me that, like I said, got into school my very last day. So I guess you could say that started a little bit of a fire underneath me. I knew I needed to work a lot harder in order to accomplish my goals. So I got a 1440 out of 2400, went to a really shitty school, ended up dropping out, moving back home, going to junior college. And it was when I got to junior college is when I was like, all right, I got to, take this more seriously. So I bootstrapped myself, worked really hard in school, joined a bunch of different like honor societies, even joined Big Brother, Big Sister, and became a mentor to like a 13-year-old kid in Jersey City, just to build up the resume as well as, build some characteristic skills and whatnot. And then, I just started applying to schools. And at this point, like, I kind of had a feeling that these schools that were like USC, which would have been a reach when I left high school, wasn't really that much of a reach anymore. And sure enough, I got into every school that I applied to, which was Northeastern, University of Miami, and then ultimately USC, which I chose. It was a great learning experience throughout those 2-3 years of, my first year of college and then finishing junior college. It was a very, I think I went from being like a, very immature kid to a maturing adult during those years, just because I knew I looked at school as more of a business than I did a time to party and don't get me wrong, I did my fair share of partying, but school was more of a focal point in my life at that point.
Okay. What did you know already in college what you wanted to do?
Not even close. So I guess I kind of this whole bootstrapping thing. So to give you a little bit more insight, my parents got divorced at a pretty young age, and my mom struggled maintaining jobs pretty much my whole adolescent years. So when I got into USC, I knew I was going to have to make the best of it in terms of financial aid. So I literally first school within USC I could get myself into, I pretty much took that in stride. So I ended up getting into the poli-sci school. I thought based on some of my friends' experiences, they kind of just took any major they wanted and then just networked their way into whatever job they wanted after school. I mean, you know how it is. Who you know is essentially more important than what you know, I guess.
Oh, for sure.
I don't want to say that. Don't take that in context, but I'm just saying. The networking is obviously a crucial thing. So after I graduated from USC, I actually joined a campaign that was more in line with my major, and I hated it. I've actually moved back to New York City for a campaign in New York City. And, I mean, it just wasn't for me. Like I knew I wanted something a little bit more like. Honestly, at that point, I didn't really know what I wanted. But anyway, I moved back to LA and I ended up getting a job at a bank, City National Bank, in Century City, and I was in analysis and underwriting, and it was 3 years of hard work and not much passion. It was kind of just cashing paychecks in order to just get by at that point, trying to figure out what would be my next moves, and I guess ultimately that was a pretty defining moment in my life, just because it gave me the opportunity to kind of think outside the box and look for ways to get myself out of that situation. Actually, through that time when I was at City National, I started, I guess, taking a little bit more of a risk in terms of entrepreneurial goals. I never really thought too much about being an entrepreneur growing up. And I honestly, I don't even really like that name either. I don't really see myself as an entrepreneur. I just see myself as a hustler, a hard worker, and a grinder. And so I started my first little venture, which was Original Grit. And just to give a little bit of insight on that too, Original Grit was essentially, it stands for hardship in the face of courage. I'm sorry, that's backwards. Courage in the face of hardship. And so what I did was just created some t-shirts, hats, and bracelets, and then in return gave back to homeless veterans living in Los Angeles. By providing them everyday essentials like toothpaste, toothbrushes, deodorant, things like that, protein bars. I just kind of looked for opportunity just to, one, give back to the community, but also kind of start a venture. At the time, Tom's was doing really well with the whole buy one, give one. So I kind of built off their model in terms of, a business model in terms of success. And that lasted relatively long. We did that for about a year and a half. Got some pretty good publicity off it, but ultimately, it dissolved only just because of lack of passion, I guess, after a while and whatnot.
Did you feel it just wasn't the main thing you wanted to do, or was it just too hard to market out? Or
yeah, at that time I didn't know anything about marketing. I created a Kickstarter campaign, and although that I ended up being a success and I funded that goal, and I didn't really know what I was doing. Most of the money that came from that were friends and family of myself and my partners, which was, it was a great learning experience, but I think had I had a little bit more knowledge in marketing, I would maybe been able to expand my reach with that company. Mostly my network is Los Angeles and New York City, so I targeted those two markets, but I think what I was actually selling and the community in which I was trying to reach would have been better for middle America. I think I could have done well if I targeted the Texases and the Oklahomas and the other middle states. But it was a lesson learned. It was a really cool experience. I got to meet amazing people, especially within the homeless community and those that are helping the homeless. But I think one day it'll be something that I come back to. But right now I just kind of have to find something that allows me to get back to that.
Okay. What are you working on right now?
Yeah, so I recently, last year I left, or 2 years ago I left the bank, and I started at a tech cybersecurity company, doing sales for them. That company went under, so it gave me the time and the freedom to explore new ventures. And at that time I was because of the Original Grit, I was a little bit more interested in the marketing, just because I knew I didn't know how to really market. So I ended up joining a marketing agency, doing an internship for them. That went really well. I learned a lot of the day-to-day campaigning in terms of Facebook, Instagram, Google as well as did some web development. And then during that time, I just continued to pursue those skills and meet people that were really good at marketing as well as web development. And I ended up, after a recent trip to Thailand, I ended up starting my own digital marketing, social media marketing company. So currently I'm running that. And so far so good. It's definitely a lot of struggle in terms of bringing business in as well as doing all the day-to-day type stuff, but so far so good.
That's awesome. And I'm sure it took a lot of all those previous jobs to lead you to this point? Like, I don't think you could have just came out of college and been like, oh, I'm going to start this marketing media company right off the bat. You needed those experiences between the skills and the ups and downs of that to figure out like, oh, this is where I want to be. And so what I like about that is I feel like a lot of people go through not that exact path, but that kind of struggle where it's like they get out of college, maybe they weren't even that good getting into college, they graduate, they take some safe job because they just wanted to cover the money, and then they doesn't really get past that. So how did you not get stuck at the bank or at the jobs that were just paying bills?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's actually something that I see amongst a lot of my friends, is just, kind of getting that first job and feeling, working there, starting to get raises, promotions, making good money, and then essentially getting stuck in that industry, even though it's not something that you're necessarily passionate about. And, it took a lot of convincing on my end. Like, I mean, even speaking with parents and friends, it's like, all right, I'm going to take, essentially at this point, I, had a pretty good salary. I was making good bonuses, and I was essentially going to take that away from myself and struggle again. And, it took a lot. I mean, honestly, like I went from making, upwards of $70,000 after, my second year out of college. And then I dropped my salary down to less than $50,000 to take a new job in a different industry. And it was really tough. I mean, I'm not going to lie, like, making ends meet, paying all my bills, being happy, being able to take little trips here and there, that pretty much went out the window,
There's a couple of huge points you brought up there that I want to tap into. The first one being what you were just talking about. You took that pay cut, you went for something that was unsure. I know anyone listening, and I'd be thinking this too, is let's say I'm someone listening who is making good money, like your first job. And let's say they also have another idea they want. How do you decide to take, like, what's the deciding factor that allowed you to take that risk of like, oh, I'm going to take a pay cut and risk all this?
I think it started when I started dabbling in original grit. I figured out, I made an effort to make the best use of my time. So, I mean, I was going to work, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week. But on top of that, I was building original grit, which took a lot of effort. I was, meeting with different companies to try to partner with them. Obviously, the manufacturing aspect of things. So I was constantly doing things that weren't within my typical 40-hour work week. And that kind of gave me the courage to be like, I think I'm better, not better, but like, I think I have more worth than what it is that I'm doing just in order to make it by. I didn't want to just be the guy that, spent 30 years in a bank and was just like, all right, I'm just waiting for a retirement. I wanted to push my boundaries and push my limits and see where I could actually, what is the best thing for me and where can I strive the most at? Where can I make the most difference? And honestly, that was partly the reason why I was just like, fuck it, like I'm going to take the pay cut, just because I knew if I didn't take the pay cut that I would still be in the banking industry to this day. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just I knew it wasn't for me.
Yeah. How long did it take from you from the first day you had the idea of like, I don't think this is for me, I need something with more connection, to you actually pulling the trigger and following through?
Probably a decent amount of time. Just because I was, working on the project while I was still working at the bank. Like I wasn't making any money on it at the time. I was just kind of, we put a lot of money into the manufacturing up front. So we had to pay back that, and so like I couldn't, I had my goals in mind, like, oh, I'm going to like quit on this day in order to take on original grit full time. But that day ultimately never came. But I think it was after I realized that day would never come is when I really was just like, you know what, like I got to just pull the trigger. And, I did. I put out a lot of feelers, and, ultimately I took the next job, which was a $20,000+ pay cut. And I think it was the best decision I ever made.
It's such a roller coaster of a ride, because you went from safe job, good pay, wasn't resonating with you, went for the risk of like something you actually connected with and was a passion, and then that just unfortunately didn't work out. So then you had to rise back up. I feel like at that point, people are already hesitant to go chase something that excites them. And then for it to not work out, what was the mindset? Because I think you said like people had helped with the funds and stuff like that. How are you feeling once that wasn't working out the route you wanted to and you had to find another solution?
Yeah, ultimately that project, went under. But I don't ever want to look at it as a failure. I think ultimately it was a success in the fact that it pushed me to, essentially press my limits and try something that I never thought that I'd ever try. I actually want to go a little bit further back and just, I wanted to bring something up, and it was about a book that I read a while back, and it's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Napoleon Hill?
Yes. And I always, took a lot from that only because I thought that he spoke measures in terms of the differences between, growing up with a father that, started businesses and knew how to manage money and invest the right way, opposed to a father that, didn't necessarily have those skills and never was taught those skills. I mean, my dad was a blue collar, worker, great father figure, great role model. I definitely can never say that's not true. But in terms of my goals and trying to build my own businesses and stuff, he wasn't somebody that I can necessarily go to for the correct advice. Don't get me wrong. I love telling my dad everything that I'm working on, and he gives me, great motivational advice in terms of just keep pursuing those dreams, blah blah. But in terms of having something there to help strategize, I never really had that. So after Original Grit went under, I kind of was at odds. I didn't really know I thought I kind of, even though I did see it as a success, I did kind of look at myself as a failure because all these family members and friends invested in this idea, and ultimately I had to pull the plug on it. So that hurt me inside just because I didn't live up to what I thought might be expectations from others. But I think at the same time that kind of pushed me again to continue pursuing different goals and different projects, just because I know that's inside, that need for success is in me. And I think Original Grit kind of created that idea of what success would look like, in terms of something that I created or something that I was a partner in the very beginning. So I think if that answers your question, I think that.
Oh yeah, for sure. You hit it right on the nail. I think anything can be good or bad, but it's how you shape your perspective on it that's going to really shape it. So you could look at that, what happened to Original Grit, and someone can look at that and say, oh, you know what, screw this, I give up. Or you can look at it like you did and find the silver lining, what's the lesson to be learned here? Oh, it showed me what a taste of success looks like. It shows me where I can go and where my potential is. It shows me that whether I did good or bad, I'm still alive, I'm still surviving, I can still keep going, and that you can use that energy to propel you forward to the next idea. Because shit, man, it's whose first idea ever launches off as a huge success right away. That doesn't always that's not the average,
Yeah.
Usually you have to go through a bunch of ideas before you find the one that hits. So that's awesome that you've found a way to turn that into something huge to propel you forward. And I like that you were talking about your family and how that played a role. How was your childhood growing up in terms of the mindset and what that brought to you today and how you think and shape yourself today?
Yeah, I mean, my childhood was, I had a great childhood. My parents loved me. Like I said, they did get divorced at a pretty young age, which definitely made it difficult. Especially, being a child within that, it kind of, I saw things that a lot of young kids probably didn't see in terms of, financial struggles, relationship struggles, things like that. And I think, ultimately that was a driving force behind my reasons for wanting to succeed. I saw what my parents wanted for us and what ultimately they probably couldn't provide for us. And I just don't ever want to have to, now that I would never take it for granted. What I went through as a child, what my brother and sister and myself went through together, were things that will forever, be embedded in me, and things that will forever drive me forward too. And I think that, the environment in which you grow up in is such an important aspect of who you are throughout the rest of your life in terms of building those characteristics and those skills. I mean, as a kid, I remember I grew up right outside New York City, loved to skateboard. And I remember telling my parents, oh yeah, I'm going to go to the skate park for the day, and actually end up taking the PATH train and then the subway train to fucking Central Park. And they all thought that I was down on First Street skateboarding in the skate park. And little things like that where, I felt so free, and I felt that I can make whatever decision I want, meant so much. And I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I do think that the environment in which you grow up in does play a major role in who you are as you start growing up and the decisions you do start making.
What is the if you can think of one, what is the biggest piece of adversity or like obstacle you had to overcome as a kid that like shapes who you are today, that kind of shapes that mindset of like, I don't see failures, I just see pushing forward?
Yeah, so I guess if you're watching the podcast, you can see that I have red hair. I also mentioned that I grew up right outside New York City. So I lived in a pretty inner city area where sports were definitely a major, activity in which kids were, participating in. And I loved basketball. I loved all sports, and I was blessed. I was a pretty athletic guy, I'd like to think. So I took sports in stride, honestly. The adversity that I think I could have seen was, just the tormenting of having red hair. It's just something easy to find on somebody to pick on them with.
Hey, and Game of Thrones, you're kissed by fire.
I am.
So you are blessed.
I put my fist in the air for that.
I think all gingers united at that moment.
Can't say the same when Ed Sheeran came on, but
that was very random. It was such a random.
But yeah, honestly, I think that I allowed, or I had the opportunity to get picked on a lot. I think based on just the color of my hair, and I think because I was because I performed so well in sports, I think that kind of negated that. But with that being said, like, that pushed me to continue to be really good in sports because I wanted to gain the respect of the people that were, that I was playing against. I didn't want them to, I knew right when I walk onto the court, people would be like, oh, this, like, Ginger, we don't have to worry about him. And then when I,
outperform him.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, now I got your respect, And I think that really did I think that carried a lot of weight throughout my life just because the competitiveness of it. Like, I think in sports, I always wanted to be the best. And I don't think I always was, but in my head, like, I knew I was always working to be the best. And I think, like, today, the fact that, I'm constantly trying to push my, my envelope and, do something that I didn't ever think that I could ever accomplish. I think that, really does resonate from when I was a kid and when I was constantly trying to prove myself. And it's not about, like, proving myself to others necessarily, although I think, in a sense, like, that does matter only from, being able to bring other people in to do business with and to partner with. Obviously, your credibility does need to be, have to carry weight. But just from an internal standpoint, like, I love outperforming my expectations. I think that is huge in terms of continuing to grow as a person, as well as, building that confidence in order to be successful.
Yeah, I can definitely see that from the stories you're telling. Now that childhood, about the stories you mentioned about them seeing the Ginger, not worrying about it, and you making sure you outperform them, I could definitely see how that carries over now, and it makes sense why you're saying when you see the failures, you're just like, oh, this is just going to propel me to the next step, and I refuse to lose at anything because,
if you don't mind, I have another little crazy story.
Yeah, go for it.
Follow suit. So I have another tattoo on my body as well. It's and it's on my forearm, and it says Chicago Avenue, or Chicago Ave. And that story is about a day on the beach that I had when I was in high school. So Joe, we were talking about it before the podcast, and you're kind of talking about, like, people that influence you. And I told him, I was like, I'm sure I have, if I think about it, there's a lot of people that influence me. Obviously, like, my parents influenced me. Some people, I have a couple mentors in LA that influenced me. But I think what ultimately influenced me is different events that happened in my life, and kind of like what I was just talking about with, like, being a Ginger on the basketball court. Like, that was something that I think helps me drive forward every day. But another one that had a big impact on me was it was April 24th, 2008. I was 18 years old. It was like a weekend before prom, beautiful weekend in New Jersey, and we went to one of my friends' houses that was down the shore, and we were walking on the beach, and there was, like, a little kid that was skimboarding with his mother, and his board went into the ocean, and like, we just happened to walk by right at the right time. They're like, hey, can you guys help us out? I could swear the board was probably 10 yards away. I dive in, the water is freezing cold because it's April in New Jersey, and I swim all the way, and I'm like, all right, fuck it, like, I'll just get to the board and I'll come back in. I get to the board, and I'm like about 30 yards out into the ocean. I got caught right in a riptide.
Oh, damn.
And I'm like, fuck, like, you gotta be kidding me.
All the Saints kids bored.
Yeah, and I'm like, and I tell everybody this. I have such a vivid memory of getting to this damn skimboard. It was a piece of shit board, probably maybe like $20. And
just one of those wooden ones.
Yeah, exactly. With chips in the front and the back. I'm like, I really just dove in here for this. But anyway, so I get to the board and I turn around. I'm like, fuck, I'm really far out in this ocean. And so I'm like, all right, this board clearly isn't gonna hold me up. It's on like a boogie board, you know. So like I just let it go, and literally when I let it go, all I thought about was how when Jack dies in Titanic and he just slowly fades away into the darkness. I'm not even kidding. That's what it felt. That's what it felt like. And I'm like, all right, fine. So I start swimming back in. I try paddling back in, and I'm not going anywhere. And I'm like, fuck, all right. So I'm paddling. I'm just trying to tread water, and I'm barely gaining any ground. And I'm like, all right, shit. I didn't even think about being in a riptide, to be honest. And I've thought about it numerous times in the past because it's always something they always say to watch out for. And just in the moment, I just didn't think about it, and I started to panic. And then I could start seeing my friends and like a couple other beachgoers like congregate on the beach, and they're like, "Oh shit, he's actually stuck." And then I found myself calling for help, and I'm like, "All right, I'm getting fucking tired." And I'm starting to call for help, and then I'm realizing like, "Fuck, if anybody swims out here, they're gonna be caught in the same situation I am." So I'm swimming. I'm getting really tired. I'm getting really cold, and then I start panicking even more. I'm like, "Fuck, like I'm in a bad situation." So then I dive under. I just let myself sink to the bottom. I rest on the bottom of the ocean with my eyes closed, holding my breath, just let my arms rest for like maybe like 15 seconds, 20 seconds, come back up, swim, go under. And I probably did this for about 20 different times where I'm waiting for people to, somebody to help me. And I'm literally standing at different points. I'm standing on the bottom of the ocean. I'm just like, holy shit. And I mean, I'm telling myself like this is the way I'm gonna die, it's like I can't help but to, and I'm like it's so fucked up, like how do I get myself into this situation, and I'm just like doing this over and over again, and ultimately like I remember just to the point of where I almost blacked out, and I get wrapped up by some guy, and he's like, "Dylan, my name's Ryan, I'm an off-duty lifeguard, I need you to help me swim." And I'm just like, my body just shut down after that.
Damn.
And like I remember just like slowly trying to like kick my feet to help him swim back in. And they brought me to the beach, they stood me up, and I just face planted right into the wet sand. And then I remember like maybe like 5 people picking me up, carrying me to dry sand, and then wrapping me in towels. And as cliche as it sounded, but like I really did see my life flash before my eyes. And I'm like, and like it took me a while to like, I didn't really like lost any sleep over it. Like actually that night, like I slept like a baby just because I was so exhausted from tiring myself out by swimming. But like, and it really honestly didn't really have much of an impact on me until years later, that I actually thought about it, and I was like, I thought about the good that came from it, and the fact that like by me figuring out to like go to the bottom of the ocean and rest my arms is ultimately what led me to surviving, because I easily could have just gotten tired and just let myself go, but I didn't, and like there was a reason why I didn't, and I don't know, I'd like to think maybe it's because I had the mental strength to continue to keep pushing, but I don't know what happened that day really, but I do continue to look at it as an event that continues to make me push even harder, just because I know like realistically I could have died that day, and I'm here today because I was able to continue to push. And I don't know, it's one of those things that it's just those events that happen in life. It's just like I think are so strong, and like if there's a reason to use that as like to continue to push forward, it's hold on to them.
That's a crazy story.
Yeah.
And it's funny how we all have certain experiences, maybe not to that extent, but experiences that kind of totally reshape the way we view life, and we might not realize it at that moment, but it affects us years later and realize like there's a reason that happened. So and I feel like there's a lot of metaphors that happen during that story of like trying to fight the wave, ultimately just letting go, someone saving you at the last minute. A lot of little metaphors on what you need, how you can't fight life without letting go a little bit and trusting that things will be all right. So that's crazy.
It's pretty nuts. And at first, after it happened too, I never really told anybody about it. And more, I guess in the recent years, I've been a little bit more open about it because it is something that I'm proud about. It's like at the moment I was pretty embarrassed by it, especially they actually, there was like a report about it in like the local newspaper, and I just got beat to death with comments, and like I was called a shoebie, and like all this thing, like I can't believe they're letting shoebies down to the ocean already. Like,
what's a shoebie?
Shoebie is like somebody that essentially just is from like not from the beach, that comes to the beach, and they don't look like they belong. There's another one too. They call damn, I can't remember it, but it's something that has to do with people from like the northern part of New Jersey and New York. And so I was called that. People saying like they don't even know me, but they're like, "Oh, I wish the ocean just ate him up." Like, people are dude.
That's still what year was that? You said 2008.
Yeah,
that's still like pre YouTube trolls.
Yeah.
Where he get really serious.
Yeah, I'm like, you had to have gone on the local newspaper's website in order to find this article, and you did, and then you decided to comment on it. I mean, there was probably a good 10, 20 comments on it. All people like, damn, like really, they're letting these idiots down here already, and I'm like, fuck, like, all right. I mean, I know I didn't do, I know I fucked up, but I was trying to do the right thing, So
it blows me away, and I'm obviously still prevalent to this day that you're borderline death there, and all people have to say is who let this shoe be in the water?
Yeah.
And how embarrassed was I gotta know, the people who made you get the board, they must have felt like crap afterwards.
Oh, it's great. Actually, so I'm lying on the beach. I have an oxygen mask on my face because, of course, somebody called 911. And I was fine at that point, don't get me wrong, and I thought that was super dramatic, but I couldn't, what am I supposed to say? No, I'm good, you came here to help me, whatever. And this little kid comes up to me and he's like, hey man, thanks for trying. He goes, just so you know, the board washed up on the beach. And I was like,
I was gonna say it would have been worse if he was like, you still didn't get my board.
Yeah. I was waiting. I was expecting that, but him saying the board came up on shore, I was like, oh, it's just the icing on the cake. So of course it did. Why wouldn't it?
Oh man, that sucks.
But ultimately, that's what the point of the moral of the story is that I think that although I think people very much do influence, the way that you do mold yourself and the way you are molded, I do think events play a pivotal role in that as well.
Oh, for sure. Especially as we get older, we start aggregating decades and decades of memories, and it's literally impossible for us to remember every second of every day. So what's interesting is the story we tell ourselves, it's kind of like a game of telephone. It's not going to be a super accurate picture. We're only going to take certain moments, and then we're going to base our life philosophy off of that. So you can either put a positive or a negative spin on it. So that's cool that you took something that someone could easily play victim from since then until now, and you kept it as something positive, as something that you overcame. So
yeah. Crazy. I mean, I got home that night from that event, and my mom was, waiting for me inside the house, hysterically in tears, but with champagne in her hands.
Nice.
So we had a nice celebration of my life after.
Celebration of life.
I was like, yeah, you know what? This is definitely a positive event.
So now these days, when it comes to setting goals and stuff, how do you go about setting goals? Are you someone that's super detail oriented, or?
I think I am to an extent. I definitely like to, think about, I think I'm hit or miss. I think sometimes I am, other times I think I could just pull the trigger, which isn't necessarily a good thing. But I think that's my kind of something that I battle with every day is my patience and my ability to kind of think things out, and really write out the pros and cons before jumping into it. Sometimes I could just think of an idea and I think it's great and I just kind of roll with it, and then I waste however many days trying to build something out that doesn't really exist. So I mean, when it comes to goals, I do like to write things down. My notes on my phone, I have hundreds of different notes on there, based on everything that I'm working on at the moment, and different plans in terms of going forward. But something that I've been focusing on a lot more these days is writing out my things to do every day.
Okay. How many things do you usually write?
Usually it's less than 10. Only because a lot of the things are, a good portion of them are usually things that I could quickly just turn around. But for things that are a little bit more important, I break out amount of time that I want to spend on it. So if it's prospecting, I'll put an actual amount of time that I want to do in terms of prospecting each day. If it's building a website, obviously there's a specific amount of time that I'm putting towards building a website. Building out campaigns, same thing. But then there's also I even put on there the gym sometimes that I have to do that, or stretching. I'll put 20 minutes worth of stretching, which I use kind of as my meditation in the morning.
I was gonna say it's still significant to add those things because that's moments of clarity for some people, and you need that break because that's sometimes the time when you'll make those huge connections for your work ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Not that I necessarily sit there with my eyes closed and meditate every day, but I try to do as much breathing exercises as I possibly can, just to kind of slow my heart rate down and just kind of allow myself to be a little bit more clear-headed. But the stretching I think is very crucial for me, just because as an athlete and as somebody that's as into fitness as I am, my body is super tight always. So I think the fact that I'm putting in the time to essentially better my body. I think that plays more than one role in my life in terms of the clarity, in terms of my mind, but also from a physical standpoint as well. Just because I know the rest of the day I'm a little bit more limber and a little bit more, like I have a little bit better mobility throughout the day. I think that, I don't think much of it, but I think it does play a big part in my moods as well.
I find that it's because I tend to work out in the morning, that it gives me a sense of control. Because that's the one thing that I know that, like, if I get that in, it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day, where it's like I'm staying on schedule, I'm regimented.
Yeah.
It's a must for me. I need to get that in there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people at this point know who Tim Ferriss is, and he wrote Tools of Titans. And I read I read a good majority of Tools of Titans, the one book, but a lot of a big takeaway that he got from a lot of different people that he interviewed was the 5 things that they do every day, or the things.
His morning routine.
Yeah, exactly. The morning routine. That's it. And I do try to emulate that in my own way, just because I do think it's important just to have that structure every day to rely on in order to get your day started and kick started. I think it's very important. Like, as easy as making your bed in the morning. It's like I used to not make my bed, and it didn't really bother me. But after I started making my bed, I was like, oh shit, it's a little check mark I could take. I could, or something I could check mark. Yeah, absolutely. And the same with stretching in the morning. I think that's huge for me. I just start my day off on the right note.
Yeah, that makes sense. In college, I was on the rowing team, and I used to hate it because we had 2 practices a day. So I'd have one at 5 a.m., then I'd have all my classes, then I'd have to go back again at 5 p.m. to work out. And I used to hate it because I felt like it ate up all of my day. I'd have to sleep early so I could get up. Mm-hmm. And then when I was done with class, I couldn't really hang out with people because I was either eating or I had to, I was practicing my sport. But then once I quit to do bodybuilding, I had more free time on my hands. But then I noticed that, like, I was not being smart with that time at first. Like, I was just that so-called time that I felt like was being wasted during practice, I didn't even end up using it. So it was like, wow, that actually kept me super regimented and focused on making sure I got things done on time, because I was limited on time.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I necessarily need to like have every hour filled every day, but to have like a whole list of things that I know I need to accomplish throughout the day, and knowing that there's enough time in the day to accomplish all those things, I think is, as well as check marking them off, I think that's very big in terms of just like having small wins that ultimately lead to bigger wins throughout the day, as well as weeks and months and years.
What happens if you don't get through that entire list? How does that carry over? How does that mess your regimen up?
Yeah, I mean, I try to be smart about it and try to figure out what will allow me to cross off everything. But obviously there are days where you can't, and it doesn't bother me too much as long as I make that extra effort to get that done the next day. Because if it's something that I can knock out in a day, there's no reason why that should prolong any more than an extra day.
Yeah.
Obviously, unless there's like traveling or whatever it may be. But yeah, that's not something that I hang my head over too much.
How do you? How complicated or simple do you make those goals? Because I think, at least I know when I was a trainer and when you have clients like nutrition goals, I mean, everyone's heard or experienced this, people either set out such audacious goals, or they go from, I've never been to a gym before to I'm going to go 7 days a week, which is a huge like change of commitment. So how can people like simplify it in a way that they'll get it, and it feels like you said, like even just doing the bed, it feels like a win in your head versus, I just made a list of 5 things to do, I got nothing done.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I kind of did put myself right into it. I think I did like kind of go from not going to the gym to 7 days a week, and I mean honestly, it kind of worked out for me. I think that first day, like I put like a pretty extravagant list together, but I knew I wanted to accomplish all those things, so I did. But that's just kind of who I am too. Like, if I have like things that I have to get done, like I get them done. It's just, that's my mindset. That's always kind of how I've always been. But I think it is important to take gradual steps in order to get to where you need to be at. I mean, it's pretty difficult to go to the gym one time and expect to be able to go consistently 7 days a week after that.
Yeah.
I think maybe I geared myself up to being able to do this just because I've done it in different ways throughout the past.
I feel like what I kind of picked from what you were saying there was, you said it was easy for you to jump in and do it. And I think that's a lot of going back to your childhood, and we follow our behaviors. So like, even from the get-go, you were mentioning before, like you're someone who behavior-wise, you're not going to let someone not let you do something. You're going to go overboard on it to make sure it gets done, just to prove to them like, hey, I'm not only good at this, I'm better than you'll ever expect. And I think that carries over. So I think, yeah, for what people could do who don't have that right off the bat is find a behavior change you can make for that goal. So like, let's say it's getting to the gym even just once a week. It can't just be, oh, I want to look good. It's got to be, I'm the type of person who makes sure they get to the gym once a week at least. Like I refuse to be some, you know what I mean? It's, you got to find the behavior that associates with that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.
And what do you think what's something you think holds people back from achieving their goals or even starting?
I think that initial first step, honestly. And I could go back to when, when I came out here to California. Like I said, I've never been west of the Mississippi. And I think a big part of where I am today is because I took that first step just to seek discomfort. I knew going to USC, I didn't know a single person. I knew it was going to be a life-changing event. And I knew it was going to be really fucking hard. But I knew if I never took that step, that it probably would be the worst decision I ever made in my life. And it's because I think that once you take that first step and then you continue to take steps, it builds so much momentum going forward. So like me coming to California to go to school, I think is solely the reason, or not solely, but it's a huge reason why I am where I am today. Just because that first step was the hardest step, and I knew once I took that most difficult step that everything was going to be easier after that.
I completely agree. This is my 5th year out here now, also coming from Jersey, and I feel like a lot of people think, oh, I'm not going to start, I need to get motivated before I can get started. And I think it works the opposite. I think you need to start to get motivated. So it's like for us, it's not, oh, I got to wait till I'm motivated enough to move out to California so that I can pursue whatever it is I'm going to do. No, it's move out to California, and then you being out there and on your own is going to motivate you to be like, all right, what's the next step? And it gets the ball rolling.
Absolutely.
So that's huge.
Even starting a podcast too. Yeah. You had to do your first podcast in order to get the ball rolling.
And even that was a process. I was speaking about it a couple episodes ago. I had this idea maybe 6 months ago or something like that. And I'm one of those people where once I get going, like I'm unstoppable. I'm the hardest worker in the room, first in, last out. You can't stop me. But I am so bad at starting something. Like my momentum it's so hard for me to get started because like everyone else, I find reasons to put it off or justify why it's not worth getting into it and stuff like that. And then for me, it was like just get that first episode out. And that's where also, to bring it full circle, that behavior change was big for me. I made it where I like solidified it in my head, whereas I'm going to be someone that does this podcast because I want to scale out my reach to help people get out of the same like mind action gap of starting something that I'm currently in. So like that was a strong association for me.
Absolutely.
For sure.
That's great to hear too.
Yeah. What's something you find easy to do that other people find uncomfortable?
I think networking in a sense. I'm a very social guy. I love putting myself in uncomfortable positions in order to be comfortable. I actually, when I was working for the bank, we used to have these luncheons with like the different higher executives in the company. And there was this one guy that came to speak with us, and he just really pushed the notion of seeking discomfort. And I think that really carried a lot of weight with me, just because like I said, moving out here to California, like that was a very uncomfortable situation I put myself in. Didn't know anybody, I was in a foreign place, family wasn't anywhere close. And I felt like I got a lot out of that. Like it almost made me like happy that I was like in a very uncomfortable place. I don't know, it was really weird, but I think that's the hardest thing, is that like a lot of people get so comfortable in their situations that it's hard for them to just step out of that comfort zone in order to try something new.
Oh, for sure. What going off of that, what's something for someone who's listening and might not be good at networking? What's like one piece of advice you can give them right off the bat? I'm just like, how can I get better at networking?
I mean, it's just doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I recently joined like a WeWork, actually the one right up the street in Playa Vista, and they have networking events all the time. And I'm like, I can't wait to start going to these things. And there was actually one last night, but I had prior plans, which I was kind of bummed about because I was looking forward to going to the first one, and that was the first one that I saw was up. But honestly, you just gotta go for it.
Yeah.
You just gotta get out of your own head.
And it's just to say hello. And
Yeah. I mean, like, actually, to speak about like the things on my list when I first started there, like for the first 3 days, it was meet somebody at WeWork that I didn't know, and like I did, like I think I met. So I ended up talking to one guy that I kind of knew in the past. So I kind of, I guess I kind of cheated. But the first 3 days I was there, I talked to somebody that I didn't necessarily know. And I was pretty proud of that, just because there was little wins that I got, but it were also networking opportunities as well. And one actually led to a potential like a deal that I could potentially be working on. So you never know. I mean, like even like going back, like going to the gym. Like I make such an effort to talk to people at the gym, even though
that's how we met. We just started talking.
I know, and it's like, dude, you never know what's gonna happen. Like, and especially if you're like a business savvy kind of guy, like, dude, the opportunities are endless when you talk to people.
Oh, for sure. And I think you gave a great actionable first step right there. Is just say hello to someone. Like, don't even if it got nowhere past, hey, what's up? My name is Joe, and then you both walked away. Like, that's still something. Like, that's still small wins that you'll get more comfortable. Then you'll break out in a conversation. But chances are, it probably wouldn't even end at just, hi, my name is Joe. You could easily throw in one question in there, or they'll probably ask you something. Because I think people forget also too that chances are the person you're talking to is probably either just as nervous or just as uncomfortable trying to find someone to talk to. So just find that connecting point.
Yeah, absolutely. I had the opportunity to go to Thailand this spring, and I did a little bit more than 2 weeks in Thailand by myself. And I wanted to go by myself because it was, again, seeking discomfort. Like, I was going to go to a country where I've never been before with nobody around me, no like support system, nothing. And there was nothing that excited me more than to be in a place where I didn't know anybody, and then I had to rely on my abilities to talk to people in order to succeed, and I met so many friends. I mean, there was days where, like, I was literally going moped riding, looking for waterfalls and private beaches with a group of 7 or 8 people, none of which I knew. Nobody knew each other at all, and we all spoke different languages. Like, that was like the icing on the cake in terms of that trip. The fact that, it's not that difficult to do as long as you put yourself out there. It's like, I don't know. It's just something that constantly just stays with me, is how impactful that is, and that was.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like traveling is something that everyone, if they are fortunate enough to be able to do, should definitely try it, because one of the biggest things you could do is, whether it's leaving your own state or even better, leaving a country, it forces you to experience a culture that's totally different from yours, which completely reshapes the way you view just life, because you see these other people living by a different set of rules and still functioning, and allows you to absorb some of those rules or learn how to adapt, and you meet these new people and you see how you guys can mesh and everything. It's insane.
Yeah. I think social settings is a huge part of the learning experience. Being in the field and like actually having to adapt to your surroundings is crucial in terms of your individual growth. It was crazy too. Like, there was one night I went out and I met like a bunch of random people on the street. We ended up all going to like a bar together to listen to some like live band, and they were all from. One of them was from Italy, one of them was from France, or 2 of them were from France, and then one was from Germany. But they all knew a little bit of each other's languages, and I'm like, that was one thing that them growing up in Europe was so different than us growing up in the U.S. It's like, the amount of time that it took the one guy from Germany to make it to the guy in Italy was about the equivalent to me going to San Francisco. Yet when I go to San Francisco, it's the same people, just a different city. But when he goes from Germany to where the other kid is in Italy, they're not only different people, a different city, but it's different culture, it's a different language. Like, I think that was one thing that, I think living in the U.S. kind of, obviously, the only languages I'm really learning it for the most part is Spanish, and that was only through the school system. But it was crazy to think that like these people had such more of like a obstacle in their way when it comes to traveling somewhat small distances. I don't know. It's something that kind of weighed pretty heavily on me too. It's just, I thought that was pretty cool that they had that experience growing up when we had, living in the United States. It was a little bit different.
Oh, for sure. It just gives a grander perspective on things. You realize how small we are compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah. And the learning lessons though too. It's like, you definitely get great learning lessons going to different cities and exploring different cities and whatnot, especially within your country. But going those same distances, but being in different cultures and different countries. And
totally different.
It's like it's crazy to think.
Yeah,
but it's pretty awesome too at the same time. Yeah.
That's awesome. You got to do that.
It was definitely a great experience. Learned a lot for sure. and ultimately, walked away with some prospects too for my business, which was awesome.
What made you choose Thailand of all places?
Cheap.
That's true.
Definitely a place that I always wanted to go, but I mean, I had a round trip flight that was less than my flight back and forth from New York. I couldn't say no to that.
I know I've been flying back to the East Coast for a bunch of my friends' weddings, and between gifts and hotel and airfare, I was looking at Groupon travel deals. I was like, damn, for the price of these 2 trips back home for weddings in random towns, I could have went for a 2-week trip in China and had all expenses paid.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's so cheap out there. What's your biggest goal right now that you're focusing on that you haven't achieved yet?
Just building a successful company, honestly. Like I said, I evaluate success at different levels at different times, especially something like Original Grit. But I'm on my own again, doing my own thing. With actually my company right now is called Street Logic Media, and it kind of all relates back to being street smart, but also being able to use those skills to navigate through the streets of life with digital as well. So I've been working my ass off learning about digital marketing and throughout the past year or so, and I really want to make this a success. I'm doing pretty well right now. I have a couple clients, recurring clients that are pretty happy with what I'm doing, and obviously I'm learning a lot through the process. But
and when did you start this company?
Earlier this year.
Okay.
So I was kind of doing it on the side while I was working for the agency. They don't know that, but no, I wasn't stealing any clients. But I knew ultimately I wanted to do more. They kind of had me limited in terms of what I was doing, and I wanted to have more of a hands-on experience. So after my trip to Thailand, I got the ball rolling a lot more, and just kind of did my own thing in addition to what I was doing with them. It might not even be this. It's this is definitely something that's sparked my interest right now, and I think I ultimately want to stay in the digital field. Redefining my idea of success is something that I'm really pushing for.
That's awesome, and that's good that you've kept it going, kept the ball rolling, because you've taken, as we've heard in this interview, you've found little wins in both the successes and the failures and carried it with you, and now it's taken you to a company that you just started a couple months ago and you're already got a couple clients. So that should be great news for anyone that's I'm afraid to take the jump. He's taken the jump multiple times and he's always recovered. Worst case, he's just moved on to the next thing. And again, that your first thing may not always hit. You have to explore so many, to ultimately become and hit the career you want. My theory has always been to have that expertise, you need the years of experience. And you're only going to get that years of experience by spending those years trying different things and honing your skill. And each time you try a new job or a new experience, you take a skill away from that, and it slowly starts to niche you down to what your true passion and skill set goes towards. So that sounds like you're on the right track.
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, this day and age too, there's so many resources out there in terms of getting cheap or free education. It's when I was trying to figure out what I really wanted to do, and I knew I wanted to do something in digital marketing, web development, something along those lines. I use resources like Treehouse and Skillshare in order to find professionals at what it is that I wanted to do and be better at. And I just listened to their classes and took notes and continued to do that during my free time, as well as networking. Obviously, I met with people who I knew I wanted to mentor me. And I was just because I am who I am, I was more or less able to find those people. I think there's not really much excuse at this point not to pursue those passions, because regardless of what it is that you're trying to pursue, there's resources out there that'll help you get there.
Especially in this day and age, it's so easy to just go on the internet and find that.
Absolutely, and it's great material too. If you guys don't know what Skillshare is, I definitely, especially if it is something that you want to do digital, I definitely suggest you guys getting on there, just because it's a cheap tool that you're learning lessons from the experts in those fields. And I mean, how else, what better way is there to learn, the things that you want to pursue is by professionals,
That's awesome. What would be your advice on knowing when to quit versus when to keep going?
Ooh, that's good. That's a good question. Honestly, I had Original Grit, that was pretty, it was pretty easy to figure out, when to quit. I just had, I don't want to, it's not anybody else's fault, but I probably went into the business with the wrong people. Great guys, but in terms of having the passion behind the project that we were working on, it was hard to rally that from them. So I mean that was a pretty good indication, that it's probably time to move on. Also, like I didn't mention it, but I created an app like right around actually the same time I did Original Grit, and it was kind of cool because like I was able to bootstrap. I didn't spend any money, but I was able to convince two kids from UCLA to create two apps for me, one on iOS and one on Android, for free, just to like kind of put towards their portfolio. Nice. So like I after that I like worked my ass off trying to get any type of funding I could get, but ultimately because I didn't have a functioning app really, just prototypes, I wasn't able to find any type of funding. Then somebody beat me to the market. So I mean it is what it is, like, but that was, the fact that like I couldn't really get it off the ground without any money was a good indication, that I should probably move on. But I think there's a silver lining in everything. You kind of have a feeling when to stop. And I definitely don't agree. I don't think that you should just stop because you like don't.
There's a difference between stopping just because you're uncomfortable versus stopping because there's legit reasons whether you guys it's not your passion anymore.
Yeah. I mean, like if you hit a major roadblock, like it probably would have cost me upwards of $25,000, if not more, to get this app up and running. There was no way for me to find that.
Yeah.
It's like, but at the same time, like I see a success in that. Like I got 2 working prototypes for free. It's like that was a success. But at the same time, like I was like, all right, it's probably time to move on.
Exactly, and you took those skills forward.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, just because you feel uncomfortable doesn't mean you should stop working on something.
Exactly, I agree completely. Final question I'd like to end on is, what is one actionable piece of advice you can give someone that's stuck in that mind action gap of, I want to start this or I want to do this, and then actually doing it?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think what works for me is actually creating that list of things to do. But yeah, like starting it like at a slow pace. Like, so if it is like, if you want to build a business, like what are the first things that you need to do in order to build a business? Like how to cultivate those ideas on paper, and then lay those ideas out, and then start building off of them. I do think, taking the baby steps, like just get small wins that will eventually, keep leading to the growth of this idea or this project.
Awesome. What's your social media? Any way to go to see your business or anything like that?
Yeah, so my Instagram or my business is Street Logic Media, streetlogicmedia.com, or at Street Logic Media, all no spaces. And then my personal Instagram is at Dillon Ceglio, DILLONCEGLIO. Give me a follow, say what's up. Definitely be great to hear some feedback about this podcast.
Awesome. And for Street Logic Media, if people wanted to reach out about that, what kind of clients do you take on? What's your
pretty much we range from a lot. I'm working with a tea company in Thailand right now. I'm also working for a lasers hair removal company in London, and actually working with a cyber insurance company right now as well. So honestly, we're open. I'm definitely looking for business, but if you're passionate about what you do, we love working with people that have those characteristics. So if that's you, definitely feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Dillon, thank you for coming in.
Absolutely.
Hit some good points there. Talked about making those small wins to reach your goals, and there's no such thing as failures. There's always a silver lining to everything, good or bad, that happens, and it's a matter of you shifting your perspective so that you can see those wins to help carry you forward. So
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.